you. So hello, everyone. It is a great honor for me to be here. I learned so much from the people working in the Institute and from the research it produces. It is an important moment for me. I'm grateful for it. Thank you very much, Armin, for the invitation, Professor Peters. And I look forward to getting to meet most of you. It is a big group, and to hear your comments. So I was asked to deal with two topics today. We will begin with the issue of technology and then move to the less controversial issue of the war. I promise to try and present all issues and all considerations as objectively as possible, and I'm happy to learn from your comments and suggestions and from your insights. So, the growing reliance of individuals, markets, and societies at large on technology and on the networks that interconnect between them generates high susceptibility to malicious cyber operations or cyber attacks. Today, cyber attacks can infiltrate and impact nuclear centrifuges, electrical grids, water infrastructure, and more. And in addition, the unique ability of cyber attacks is to generate or create that impact within seconds and in a very extensive fashion within moments from launch to impact. So for example, the WannaCry ransomware attack impacted over than 200,000 computers in around 150 countries, generating damage which is estimated in billions of dollars within a single day. The relative low cost and the ability of almost anyone to enter this sphere and to operate and to conduct malicious cyber operations bring about to a very lucrative or an option which eludes many people, criminals, hackers, terrorists, and more. In addition, the fact that there is a very low entry barrier allows weaker parties, including non-state actors, to bridge the gap and to take on powerful players. And in fact, in cybersphere, it is the states which are more interconnected, which are more susceptible and more vulnerable to the impact of cyber attacks. This is something that we are also seeing in the Israel-Hamas war, where we have many evidence of activities against Israeli websites and almost no activity the other way around in this regard. Just to illuminate, in Israel, 1 out of every 5 sites suffers from a cyber attack, and in the digital sphere, it is 1 of 3. Now, when we are entering a realm of an armed conflict, the number usually doubles or triples. So we are dealing with very significant numbers. Now, traditionally, states were reluctant to invoke international law in the context of cyber attacks. There are many reasons for that. Some of them are operational, some of them are political. The main reason is that states want to maintain their reputation. And in addition, states want to save for themselves some leeway of operation, for example, for espionage activities. In addition, sometimes states prefer to deflect domestic pressure to react against cyber attacks. Another main reason for the fact that states have been generally reluctant to rely on international law in this sphere is the fact that we have no international framework which regulates cyber attacks. And in addition, we don't have an international mechanism that allows for attribution based on an objective standard. This situation, though, has been changing in recent years, as we saw around 30 states like Germany, the US, the UK, the Netherlands, Israel, Iran, Japan, South Korea, Brazil, which began to present their opinion on the application of international law to cyberspace. And we also saw some advancements which have been made in the work of the GGE, the governmental group of experts, and also in the work of OEG, the open-ended working group, both under the auspices of the United Nations. At the same time, this is not enough. We need an international framework that takes into account the unique characteristics and the unique challenges of cyberspace and of new technologies in order to deal with them properly and in a common fashion. The reason for that is that we have only one international treaty which deals specifically with cyberspace, and that's the Budapest Convention, which is focused on cybercrime. Other than that, we have different fields like the law of telecommunications, IHL, IHRL, UN law, the law of the sea, that might have some relevance in unique situations which are related to cyberspace and new technologies. But at the end of the day, we are dealing with islands in the stream. In addition, even the rules which we agree on their application are being interpreted very differently between states based on their perceptions and based on different interests which they bring to the table. So for example, while most states will agree that sovereignty is something which is relevant to cyberspace, some states assert that it is a rule, some assert that it is a principle. And the threshold for the violation of sovereignty also varies across different nations. In addition, while we are all familiar with the principle of non-intervention, and while it is very common to rely on the definition of non-intervention suggested by the ICJ in the Nicaragua case, paragraphs 202 to 205, illegal intervention is an act which is first dealing with the domestic affairs of the state, and secondly, coerces that state within the domain. But when it comes to cyberspace, we have very different views as to what is the threshold for illegal intervention, even in elections. In addition, another example is the issue of armed attack. Should we take the definition of an armed attack under the UN and evaluate it in cyberspace based on an instrument-based approach, based on a target-based approach, based on an effects-based approach? Or maybe we should look, as the Netherlands assert, on economic damage, or maybe we should focus on critical infrastructure as suggested by France. So we have a wide variety of opinions and very little acceptance as to the application of the rules that we agree upon. Even privacy, a human right which is universal, and in most states, even constitutional. It is manifested very differently in different nations, and as such, there is a significant gap in the protection of privacy around the world. Now, obviously, we should aspire for an international framework that finds a common ground based on which states can operate, but it won't be an easy task. The reason for that is there are very different perceptions, interests, and also gaps in capability and in access in between states. So for example, a state like Israel, a proud member of the OECD, perceives itself as part of the Western group of states, which not only leads the development of technology, it also leads the legal discussion over its regulation. In contrast, if we will take a state like Iran, mentioned earlier, Iran perceives the current situation as unfair and advocates for more inclusiveness and equality in cyberspace. Iran even asserted that we are currently in a situation of an information colonialism, and Iran is warning against monopolization of the internet. Now, this is not the sole opinion of Iran. Several other states think that way, most notably members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But admittedly, those types of manifestations of different perceptions are not new. We have different views, mostly between the West and the rest, in relation to many fields of international law, the use of force, statehood, and etc. But cyberspace and the technological sphere forms a new arena in which there is a need to bridge the gap and to try to reconcile those different views. In addition, There are some doctrinal challenges in taking the law as we know it and apply it on this new phenomenon. So in preparation for the next presentation, let's take IHL, for example. Even very basic notions like distinction and proportionality are very hard to apply in cyberspace, given the fact that cyberspace is a dual-use sphere or ecosystem, and given the integrated nature of its infrastructure. So for example, a satellite will serve civilian transportation vehicles, and it will also serve army units. And if you want to attack one of those, you might impact the infrastructure and other systems which are also connected to it. In addition, there is the spillover issue. When you are sending malware, you cannot contain it as you wish. And in many times, the malware spreads and at times even returns to the sender, as happened with the NotPetya. Another example is the Stuxnet attack, which was directed very specifically against a nuclear plant in Iran, but later spilled over to other states like India and Russia. In addition, a main challenge or a main problem is the issue of attribution. The problem relies or derives from the architecture of the internet, which is an excellent sphere to maintain anonymity in. And in addition, a hacker or a person who wants to conduct malicious cyber operations can use proxies, zombie computers, spoofing, and other techniques which leave almost no forensic evidence behind in a way that makes it almost impossible to attribute responsibility, especially if we're taking rules such as RCWA, the Articles on Responsibility of States for Internationally Wrongful Acts, which set a very high threshold. And this high threshold is especially relevant for the relations between states and non-state actors, which is a common feature in cyberspace. In addition, we have the next challenge lurking around the corner, which is artificial intelligence. Now, while artificial intelligence is not a new phenomenon, it has been with us for decades by now, there has been quantum leaps in recent years in capabilities, and most notably in the ability to consolidate between different capacities of narrow AIs or narrow artificial intelligence capabilities. And we are seeing an outburst of platforms and opportunities for the general public, especially in relation to generative artificial intelligence. And this quantum leap did not skip, of course, the military domain. And today, modern warfare is impacted significantly by artificial intelligence and also by systems which rely on artificial intelligence, autonomous weapons, drones, and there is the next challenge of human enhancement, of the intertwining of man and machine. For example, Israel came out openly recently about using AI in 3 different spheres of activity: defensive needs, command and control, and offensive activities. And the most controversial examples are, of course, the Alchemist system, the Fire Factory system, and the Goldspell system, which are used also in order to produce possible military targets for attack. International law, as it is not equipped to deal with this new challenge. And indeed, most of the developments that we are seeing are happening either on the domestic level or on the regional level. But once again, also in relation to artificial intelligence, we are seeing that the gaps in perception and interest create different approaches. So we are now in the midst or in an intersection of 3 main approaches: the human rights-driven approach in the European Union, the market-driven or the market-centered approach of the US, and the state-centered approach of China. And we will need to wait and see if those gaps can be remedied. At the same time, there are some possibilities or options that are on the table. So the most obvious action is oversight and supervision. So states are under an obligation, for example, to supervise for new technologies with military applications or technologies which are dual use. based on Article 36 of the first additional protocol to the Geneva Conventions. This obligation also derives from human rights, most specifically the right to life, anchored in Article 6 of the ICCPR, as was illustrated by the Human Rights Committee in its General Comment number 36. In addition, in the absence of a legal framework, tools such as privacy by design and export limitations become of tremendous importance. In addition, we have some understanding, and as such, we have the capacity to try and deal with some of the inherent problems or risks of artificial intelligence. Most notably, we have the issue of explainability. And so long as artificial intelligence is not explainable, how can we, for example, use AI in order to make a decision that might impact human lives? And in the military sphere, how can we rely on AI given problems such as automation bias and lack of explainability? And how can we take the old rules which try to attribute accountability or legal responsibility to an actor and apply them on a phenomenon in which you have a system which is not a legal actor, which is making the decision? As such, and the third layer of suggestion is we need to take the existing rules and find a way to interpret them or to apply them in a way that supports or safeguards as much as possible human lives and other important considerations. So for example, we can take the principle of the reasonable military commander, which is a principle that applies in the context of targeting and also in the context of decision-making which are related to destruction of property. And we can claim that based on that principle, there is a need to maintain a human in the loop so long as we are not dealing or remedying those problems and those inherent risks of AI. Now, the road ahead, in my view, must include cooperation rather than a technologically driven, dystopian battle for hegemony and superpower. The ability of states to work together is especially significant given the risks which AI presents and new technologies at large. And while these are dire times, we must find a way to maintain optimists, to stay optimists, even in the face of the harshest or most complicated reality, as I learned from a dear friend yesterday. In addition, we must remember that international law holds within it a promise. It holds a promise that working together is a better option. So by invoking international law, by relying on international institutions, states can operate in a joint manner based on multilateral action rather than rely on their own capabilities. In addition, international law is of great significance because it invites states to take upon themselves reciprocal restraints. And the more we will push for an international framework, the higher the possibility that states will be willing to take upon themselves more limitations in terms of espionage activities, hostile cyber operations, which are also conducted by states, and also maybe on supervision on non-state actors. In addition, if there will be an international mechanism for attribution, for example, we will be able to de-escalate situations of tension and even armed conflicts. So in conclusion, international law as it stands today is not equipped to deal properly with new technologies, cyberspace, and especially not with AI. There is a need to find a way to reach a common ground, both on the application of specific rules and most importantly on their application or manifestation in this new ecosystem. It is a challenge which is inherent to international law, but at the same time, it is a feature of the system because the fact that we have common definitions or common notions allow us to engage in a discussion. And even if the US, China, and Germany will interpret completely differently notions such as sovereignty, the fact that we have some basic notions that we agree upon is a start. So I will stop here with the first issue, and I'm happy to hear any comment and to answer any question which you might have. And thank you very much for the opportunity.